The Disney look. Everywhere you go down Main Street, USA, when you're walking by the pier in Disney's California Adventure, if you're just surfing around in the lagoon at Typhoon Lagoon, you're likely to see cast members who don't look the same as they once did. Now, we're not here to judge anybody based on their appearance at all. We think that's reprehensible. But something has changed in Disney, and that may have had some unintended consequences in terms of who they're hiring. And that is changing the face of more than just the faces of employees, but the face of the company itself. All right, folks, welcome back to another beautiful day here on the WDW Pro channel. It is an honor and a pleasure every time you elect to give us your very valuable time. We appreciate it so much, and we endeavor to bring you great value in explaining entertainment and keeping you ahead of the culture curve. Today is no different, and today we are discussing the fact that when Disney went relaxed with their determinations on how their employees would look, well, it may have had some unintended consequences. There are definitely some areas that I think Disney needed to change in terms of how they were structuring the dress, attire, and appearance that their cast members and their employees were allowed to have. This had not been greatly modified since the 1950s. Over the past years now, things have switched in terms of how people appear when they are working officially for the mouse. I'll give two anecdotes and then we'll go into a conversation with several other guests who have extremely prescient points about this. But two recent stories I have. I was talking with a cast member and I looked down. The cast member was wearing shorts and I noticed that the cast member had an opposing mascot, right? A character from a different company, a non-Disney company. They had that character tattooed from their knee all the way down the side of their leg until it reached their ankle. That felt a little strange to be talking to somebody at Disney, and they are wearing permanently the visage of a different character that the company does not own. That seemed bizarre, but that's part of this new policy that makes that possible. And the second thing was, I noticed a cast member who had a literal prison tattoo, a tattoo that referenced their time in prison. I won't go into detail. I don't want someone to get in trouble or for you to identify, oh, I know who that is. So we won't go into any more specificity, but in both of these instances, that did not meet anything close remotely, nothing approximating what Walt Disney himself desired and the traditions that he set forth for the company. Is this having a more broad impact than perhaps we have granted it in the past years? It's time to take a look at this, to discuss it, and decide, is this also bringing in some people into the company that previously might not have been there? Is it good? Is it bad? We'll discuss it all right now.
So a lot of people, when they hear or read this story, I think if you're a layman, like an average person, and you say like Disney was making people keep diaries and stuff like that, it's like, that sounds like made up stuff, right? But, when I was working in Hollywood in the early 2000s, I had a friend who worked at Disney. And so I would go up to Burbank and meet him for lunch on the Disney lot and stuff like that. And so I got to see things. And Paul had talked about how his experience in Disney's in the 90s was, everyone there was miserable. And one of the interesting things about Disney, I don't know if a lot of people know this, at least in this time period in which I was visiting a lot, they had what was called the Disney Manual, right? Mm-hmm. And this was something that basically every employee at Disney, whether it be at their parks or their studios or whatever, they got this manual, and it had certain things that you had to do as a Disney employee very clearly outlined in it. And part of it was controlling people's appearances. So if you were a man, you couldn't have long hair, you couldn't have a ponytail, you couldn't have visible earrings or body jewelry or visible tattoos, stuff like that. And the whole point of this was that Disney wanted to control the appearance of their employees so that there was a uniform look throughout Disney's parks and studios and stuff like that, because they wanted to project a wholesome, traditional, family-friendly image. And so you, as an employee, could not deviate from that at all. Otherwise, you'd just be fired, or you'd be at least sent to HR and given a dressing down. So the idea here that Disney would force their employees to keep a diary and incentivize them by tying, payments to that is not out of the realm of believability for me, because I saw how Disney runs their stuff, and they're very tyrannical in terms of like how they like to do things. Now, I think that the appearance stuff has gone by the wayside as more and more activists have gotten involved with Disney.
Well, and given the prison tattoos, the last time I went to Walt Disney World, visible on the cast members, I don't mind going back to it. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, they've kind of shed their family-friendly guidelines, but the whole point I'm trying to make here is that, as ridiculous as this story sounds, to me, it sounds completely believable. And the second thing I wanted to talk about was that, so when I worked in Hollywood, there was this group organization, I don't know what you want to call it, but it was started by Gary Sinise, and it was called Friends of Abe.
Yep.
And it was basically it was like, I don't want to call it self-help, but it was something like, abuse survivors, where they go to like a group setting and they like share their experiences and get support and stuff like that. It's kind of like that, but for the Hollywood crowd. And basically, I went to a couple of these meetings, and the idea here was that the Friends of Abe was inspired by the Friends of Dorothy, which was an organization where gay people, before it was okay to be gay, in Hollywood would get together and meet up with each other and support each other and stuff like that. And so this was a takeoff on that with the Friends of Abe, where basically if you had conservative or right-leaning political beliefs and you worked in the entertainment industry, you could not freely express those beliefs without fear of being fired. And so the Friends of Abe was a organization where like-minded people who were outside of like the left of center or the far left belief system could get together and kind of support one another and freely talk about their frustrations and their beliefs and stuff like that without fear of being fired. And it was kind of interesting because I went to a couple of these meetings, some of them which actually had like very recognizable like actors and celebrities like attending them. And you would have situations where you would have people who, just everyday workers in the entertainment industry, literally break down and start crying about their experiences working in this town. And this idea that like Disney over time purged everyone with the wrong think beliefs, or the people who still have the wrong think beliefs are like hiding it so like they can keep their jobs. It's 100% accurate, because basically through my experience with this Friends of Abe organization, I saw it firsthand. I saw people who said like, I can't say I disagree with Obama without fear of getting like fired or reprimanded or something like that. And so inherently there is this huge bias in Hollywood, which actively works against conservatives or anyone who doesn't toe like the latest liberal talking point. And people can't, honestly come out against it without fear of their lives being essentially ruined. Like they can't work in that town after like they come out in support of that type of stuff. And so like this idea that Disney in particular has scourged themselves of anyone that disagrees with their politics is 100% accurate to me. In fact, I would even go so far, I wouldn't call it Marxist, but maybe Chattoist. I think I'm going to replace Marxist with that term now. It's hardcore Chattoism.
So let's touch on you talked about the
neo-Chattoism.
You talked about the DEI diary, right? And when people hear that, you're right. It does seem so outlandish that they might say, oh, well, that's just fake news. There's no way that employees were keeping diaries, so that they could prove their fealty to the cause. But it's this simple. If you're going in for a job performance review and 25% of your pay above your salary, which by the way is part of your expected salary you're anticipating you're going to receive, if 25% of that is tied into, what did you do this year for DEI, then you've got to go into that meeting and prove yourself. So absolutely, you're going to begin keeping a tally of everything you did throughout the year so that you can then pull that out and say,
I washed Justin Simeon's socks.
Yeah. I would never work for a company like that. Now, the one thing I will add to this is that this is just a page torn out of the university playbook. Maybe not the keeping the diary stuff, but everything else. There's no conservatives in a vast number of universities anymore. You need to have multiple voices to create a good educational system, and diversity includes voices that you don't agree with, and I'm all for that. And everything that I've heard so far, these last few shows, which I've been listening to at home, have just, it just sounds like what happens at higher education. This is where it was all planned out. This just been transferred over to
the Ivy League got into the castle.
Yeah, I'll say from my corporate experience, when performance reviews come up, if you have a hostile boss and you know that someone from HR will be reviewing that document and they don't like you, the person that has to sign it along with you to agree on your performance, you write a novel in order to put it in that section, especially if it's a digital document.
And I would like to add one more thing, Jonas. Sorry to interrupt you. But if you really think about it, what do these big DEI departments do? It's like there's only so much like diversity and inclusion you can rally for in order to justify a paycheck. What I think that they use these divisions for was really just to spy on their employees. Like these are the people that would look at social media, that would track what they're saying and what they're hearing, to try to root out within the company the people who were promoting wrong thing. And so like that's really what these divisions were for. It was like internal surveillance, essentially.
It's a great point. Lorena, what advice would you give to current Disney employees who may have been listening to the show and they're trying to figure out what do they do in this situation, or perhaps they're working for another corporation inside entertainment or corporations at large? What's your advice for those who are uncomfortable with some of these divisions and what they force them to do?
Wow. Well, first thing I would say is when it comes to IT, there is no expectation of privacy. That's no excuse on Disney's part, but every company I work for, you always assume that your email is being monitored. As for advice for Disney employees, you kind of have to have that come to Jesus meeting with yourself. Is your career at Disney worth the price of them knowing all this information about you, putting you through these, I call them struggle sessions? And yeah, that's exactly what it is. These struggle sessions, and tying your performance, which should be based on merit, based on how much you buy into and do these DEI activities. You really do. And from the outside looking in, because at one time I did want to be an Imagineer. I really did. That was like my dream job. And then I started getting word out of Disney what happens there. And I was just like, no, there are better opportunities out there. So one, make sure your LinkedIn is up to date. Number one. Two, make sure your network is tight of who you can trust, and start to look from there, because I don't see things changing with this anytime soon. I mean, there's DEI at my company. However, that is not like they're spying on you. It's not like they're saying that you have to take this session or that session. Yes, we have yearly diversity training, but same thing with security and a whole bunch of other stuff, but never to a level like this. If this was to this particular level and I was at Disney, I'd quit.
Well, folks, we hope this was a meaningful conversation. We have different guests every single week. We get big names and they have big ideas, big thoughts, and the commentary is fantastic. If you'd like to be a part of the Pro Show Live, it's every Thursday, 5 to 7 p.m. Eastern Time. And of course, you get access to the Pro Show for 48 hours afterwards. Then it goes into the archives. Members of the channel, though, they get access to those archives forever. So they have all the Pro Shows, every single minute of them. It's just the price of a soda to get access to all of that, plus more exclusive content right here on the channel. You might want to click that join button. Folks, wherever you are and whatever you're doing, keep learning, keep growing, and keep having fun.